this might be a hot take, but I do think the Blue Jackets are going to be a little bit better defensively this season than they were last. We discuss on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team, and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get things started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. I also have to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner, so visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. Back to regular programming. Today we finished our top 25 under 25 series. I had a lot of fun with that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it as well. I did get a great email from a listener today telling me how much they enjoyed it. So shout out to that listener. But hopefully the rest of you enjoyed it as well. I want to talk about the defense today. Because I feel like that's the biggest question mark in terms of position. And I'll explain what I mean by that, which is the forwards I feel like improved. I think it's pretty much, taken as a given that the forwards are going to get better for the most part. Like Fantilli's a year older, Mateychuk's a year older, Johnson's a year older, Sillinger's a year older, etc. Monahan will probably continue to be very good, and then your support guys, your Jenners, etc. Will probably continue to be about what they are, right? They improved the bottom six. I think I don't think it's a question of saying that the Blue Jackets will be, if not as good as they were last season, then definitely better, right? Yes, they shot above their means, but I have no reason to think that won't continue, right? Like, they didn't lose any big pieces. The goaltending is a question mark in as much as Jet Greaves is a question mark. You know what Elvis is, right? What is Jet Greaves? The defense is interesting because they're bringing back basically the same bottom six that they had last year, or, the bottom six, that they're bringing back the same 6 or 7 defensemen that they had last year, right? Like, Jack Johnson is gone, Jordan Harris is gone, but they were 8 and 9 anyway, right? It's going to be in the top 4. It's going to be Werenski, Fabbro, Provorov, Mateychuk, and then your bottom pairing is probably going to rotate between Christensen, Severson, and Gabranson, depending on, any given night, what the team is doing, how the players are playing, what Dean Everson feels like doing with David Severson, But the question mark for me is, can the defense improve by bringing back all of the same guys in the top 4 specifically is what I'm talking about. So last year, obviously, there was a lot of movement in the defense corps. Like, it took 20 games into the season for Zach Werenski to get a consistent defense partner. There was in and out of the lineup. Eric Gabranson was hurt for a bunch of the season. They brought David Jiricek in and then sent him away and then brought him in and then traded him. And, Christensen was around a bunch. Severson was up and down the lineup. Like, there was all kinds of movement, right? And like, I pulled up the specific numbers. I'm going to get into these in a second here, but like, as an example of like how inconsistent the defense was, like before Fabbro and Mateychuk got there and kind of solidified it. Zach Werenski played 2,166 minutes in 81 games last season. He played 1,009 minutes with Dante Fabbro. So 1,000 of his minutes were without Dante Fabbro. So over half of the season, he didn't have Dante Fabbro. And that's including the 20 or so games before he got there, right? Like, so similarly, Ivan Provorov played 82 games, had 1,915 minutes. And then when Denton Mateychuk got there, 537 of Denton Mateychuk's 811 minutes were with Provorov. So, like, again, there's 1,400-ish minutes of Provorov's game either before Mateychuk got there or, the usual late in the season shuffle around and whatnot, right? So really, really inconsistent right up until, so Denton Mateychuk played 45 games this season. I don't believe he missed a game once he got there. So for the first, here we go, math time. The first 36, 37 games, 45 plus 37 is 82. Yes, maybe. We're going to go with that. So for the first 37 games of the season, things were basically all over the place, right? And so it's really difficult looking at like players' individual stats over the season because, again, Zach Werenski played 50% of his minutes without Fabbro. Ivan Provorov played, I think, 3/4 of his minutes without Mateychuk, and those were the top 4 pairings. So it's kind of difficult to look at like a full season scope and say, okay, well, this is what the defense is. And like, I feel like Don Waddell has kind of has spoken to that to some, and I agree with him to some extent, right? Of like, look at the record with all 4 defensemen in the lineup. Look at the record with, one of them missing. Now, this to me feels a little bit disingenuous on account of the fact that Ivan Provorov didn't miss a game this year. Zach Werenski missed 1 game. So, it's difficult to look at this and say, well, when all 4 of them were in the lineup, things were really great. And when, one of them was missing, things weren't so great. Because, like, for 99% of the season, both Werenski and Provorov were both in the lineup, right? So it's really looking at how much did Fabbro and Mateychuk improve this defense core? Because it's like, it's not nothing. It's also not everything, right? And again, this is just kind of how advanced stats is it's great to look at, and then like I'd like to look at something and then be like, okay, well, why? Like, do I agree with that? And if I don't agree with that, like I'm gonna go watch a bunch of tape and try and get the eye test to match to the analytics. And if that doesn't work, then I try to dig a little deeper and be like, okay, well, is this the way that I'm watching? Is it the model? Because obviously every model measures things in slightly different ways, right? And everyone has the models that they like. I'm going to be using hockeyviz.com today, which is Micah Blake McCurdy's model that he builds himself. And I'm also going to use Money Puck. And I don't know off the top of my head what their model is. But these are slightly different models. There's also Dom Decision's model from The Athletic. There's also Jay Fresh's model. There's Natural Stat Trick, which I believe uses one of the other models that I've already mentioned. There's Hockey Stat Card, which uses Don Decision's model. Like, there's a bunch of them out there, right? So one model will say, hey, this player is great. And another model will be like, this player is bad, right? And, sometimes inexplicably, good players have bad models and bad players have good models, right? So it's you can't sit here and be like, well, this is the model that I'm going to look at, and this is the only model that I listen to, and therefore, if this model agrees with me, then that is exactly what the player is, right? So all that being said, this is the Blue Jackets' top 4. Where do they rank in the league, right? Just kind of as a group. Are they a top 10 defense core in the NHL right now? I don't think so, but I think that there are a bunch of reasons for this. I really like, and we've talked about this at length, so I'm not going to get too deep into it. Like, I really like the Werenski-Fabbro pairing. I think Fabbro really stabilized Werenski in the same way that Werenski and Seth Jones were a really great partnership, way back in 2021 or whatever it was that Seth Jones left. I think it was 2021. And since then, Werenski hasn't really had a consistent partner. He's just kind of played with whoever. Dante Fabbro comes along, suddenly he's got a consistent partner, and shockingly, you get some of the best hockey that Zach Werenski's ever played, right? Like, he point a game player, Norris finalist, got a non-insignificant amount of votes for like the Hart Trophy, etc., right? Really, really, really strong season from Werenski. And I think a lot of that is due to Dante Fabbro. So I like that top pairing a lot. The second pairing, I think, is the question mark for me. And this is no secret to, everydayers. I was openly quite skeptical of the Provorov contract. I think it's too much money for too long for a player that I think is can be good, but probably won't live up to that contract. This is the thing. I thought I thought Ivan Provorov had a fine year for the Blue Jackets this year. I thought he was much better than he was last year. Now we have to see, was this a contract year performance? Now that he's got his paycheck, is he just going to kind of sink back into the player that he was like his first year in Columbus, or the player that he was for, large stretches of time in Philadelphia, which is plays a bunch of minutes, doesn't really do a lot in those minutes, and is absolutely diabolical on the penalty kill. And we'll probably talk about the penalty kill specifically a little bit later on, because that I think is a big part of what will make the defense look better is if they stop bleeding goals on the penalty kill, right? So that's something that I want to talk about in a little bit here. So, but Provorov, I think, is a question mark. We don't know what Provorov we're going to get. Are we going to get the Provorov from last year, who was, a very acceptable second pairing defenseman? Or are we going to get the player that he was in Philadelphia, which is, and I'm using Michael McCurdy's numbers here, but basically for long stretches of being in Philadelphia, he was a third pairing defenseman that played first pairing minutes. He's been fine so far for the Blue Jackets. I thought he was good this season, bad last season, evens out into, again, being a fine second pair option that is for some reason being paid like a first pair option for the next 11 million years. And I know that part of this is, you missed out on Noah Dobson. This was your last choice of player. You either go into this season with Provorov or you go into the season without a second pairing right shot defenseman. And I understand the reluctance to do that. I probably would have done that, but I mean, that's why I'm not the GM, right? So that's kind of to break it down in terms of Provorov. In terms of Mateychuk, he was a very solid rookie defenseman. I feel like his underlying numbers weren't great. He was one of the weaker defensemen on the team in terms of generating offense. In terms of limiting offense, I thought he was fine. I didn't think he was like the worst in the world. I also didn't think he was the best in the world, right? Like and this was kind of that line's problem, was that they were fine defensively and didn't really create a lot offensively. And that, I think, is something that's going to come as Mateychuk develops, right? So at the minute, he's a question mark. Are we going to see a sophomore slump from him? Are we going to see a continued step forward? He was one of the best defensemen in the AHL before his call-up as a rookie. He's still only 20 years old. I don't think he's turned 21 yet. I think he turns 21 in the season, or has literally just turned 21 like 3 days ago. His birthday's coming up, basically, is what I'm saying here. So Denton Mateychuk is going to be fine. It's just going to be a case of, can he keep taking steps forward, or is it going to be a non-linear development path for Denton Mateychuk? And so that, for me, is the big question mark, right? In terms of where this defense core ranks in the league, is I think that Werenski Provorov, for me, is easily a top 5 pairing in the NHL, especially based on last season. The Provorov Mateychuk pairing, I think, was a lot weaker. Not top 30. Which is fine, because there are 32 teams in the league. A second pairing defenseman being between the 30th and 40th best defense pair in the league is perfectly fine, right? But the problem is that I think that they need to improve. So let's take a break. And then when we get back, I want to talk a little bit about more reasons why I think that this upcoming season is going to be better than last season defensively. And so we'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I want to tell you about FanDuel, because August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. And for just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions, so whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long-shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before Week 1 even kicks off, you can do all of that at FanDuel. This is your moment to pick a hot take. I saw the Bears beat the Bills in a preseason match. If you want to hang your hat on the Bears being the best team in the NFL, I don't know that that's something I would do, but that is absolutely something you could do in FanDuel's Futures Day. Make sure you wait until then, August 26th. Visit the FanDuel app or go to FanDuel.com. Start planning your futures bets now because it's one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We're talking about the Blue Jackets' top 4 defensemen today and why I think that they will be better this year than they were last year. So I've kind of broken down where they are in the league right now. I've talked a little bit about each player. Now we're going to kind of look at pairings together. And this is, this is why I think that there will probably be improvements this season than last season, because at the minute the stats take place over the last 82 game stretch, right? But really you want to look at like the last 45-ish games of the season, because that's when your top 4 really kind of arrived, right? You didn't have Damon Severson floating around on the top pairing. I thought Christensen and Severson was a fine second pairing. I think they will probably be a fine third pairing for the team this season if that's, what Dean Evason goes with. But until Mateychuk got here, 37 games into the season or whatever I said it was, you can't look at the overall stat because it's just, you want to look at that 45 game stretch as opposed to the full 82 game stretch. And the other reason for this as well is since those players arrived, they basically immediately got locked into those minutes, right? Like 3/4 of Dante Fabbro's minutes, or over 3/4 of Dante Fabbro's minutes, were with Werenski. I believe he missed 3 games while he was with the Blue Jackets, right before the Four Nations break. I want to say, I don't remember if he missed the game that Werenski also missed. I think that he did. But basically, as soon as he arrived, he basically got stapled to Werenski's hip, and that was that, right? Similarly, Mateychuk played 811 minutes, and 537 of those were with Provorov. I don't have off the top of my head, I don't think. Let's see if I can pull it up real quick. In terms of who else he played with, he played 31.5 minutes with Dante Fabbro. He played 33 minutes with Eric Branson. He played 50 minutes with David Severson. He played 52 minutes with Zach Werenski. And all of this is, my guess is that it's, the odd shift here and there, or, it's things aren't working. We're going to change things up mid-game, right? But I feel like for the most part, the game started and you were like, okay, well, it's 8:15 and then 5 and 9. Those are your pairings. Let's go. And that the numbers reflect that, right? Again, 3/4 of Dante Fabbro's minutes were with Zach Werenski once he got to Columbus, and that I feel like was really when you saw Zach Werenski take off offensively. Having all of those numbers, and then again you extrapolate those out to the full 82 game season. So it's in theory anyway. If we assume that the same kind of ratios hold true, we should be seeing almost 1,600 minutes for Denton Mateychuk this upcoming season, and about 1,100 of those should be with Ivan Provorov. That's good if they continue to work together as a pairing. And like I said, I do like those two as a pairing. Similarly, I think Provorov is at his best when he is being the support veteran on a pairing. I really liked him with David Jiricek. When those two were in the lineup together, I thought that they worked really well together because Provorov kind of stepped back and again played that support role. I feel like a lot of one of my issues with Provorov is that he will just kind of occasionally just kind of do whatever. And it's in a different way to Damon Severson, just kind of his brain blue screening for a minute and throwing the puck away. But I feel like if you give Provorov the ability to be the driving playmaker on a line or the driving player on a line, then he kind of goes a little bit mad with power, right? And thinks that he can do things that he can't. He's not the fastest guy in the world. He's not the most defensively adept guy in the world. And so him being the offensive driver on a line, on a pairing, typically goes poorly because he will pinch and things will go very badly. But putting him with Mateychuk, who, in fairness, didn't create as much offense this season as I wanted him to, and I think that that line didn't create a ton of offense kind of by itself. I believe it created. I'm just pulling this up. So Werenski Fabbro created 51.5 expected goals for. Provorov and Mateychuk created 17 goals for. Now, again, that was in about half as much ice time, so expected goals for per 30 minutes. Werenski and Fabbro created 3.6 goals per 60 minutes, or 3.06 goals, excuse me. Provorov and Mateychuk created 1.91. So about every 60 minutes, Werenski and Fabbro were creating one more goals worth of offense than the Provorov-Mateychuk pairing. Provorov and Mateychuk gave up a little bit more defensively than Werenski and Fabbro did, which again makes sense. But my hope for this pairing going forward, I guess what I'm saying here, is that if they can figure out how to unlock Mateychuk's offense and let Provorov play that support role that he is better at, then I think that will be a much improved pairing. Because again, like the pairing itself, I thought eye test wise, I thought was fine. Interestingly, the stats don't really agree with that. They were one of the worst offensive teams. They were one of the worst pairings on the team at creating offense. They were fine at not creating offense, typically speaking. They were let's see. In terms of pairings that played 200 minutes on the team, which is 5 pairings. The Provorov and Mateychuk were basically bang in the middle in terms of their defensive impact, but they were well on the bottom in terms of their offensive impact. And I do have reason to believe that Denton Mateychuk will unlock some of the offensive potential that we saw in the WHL when he was playing there, and in the AHL at the beginning of last year, right? Like, it is tough to be a rookie defenseman in the NHL and have an offensive impact without sacrificing defensively, you know? I feel like you see this a lot with rookie defensemen, I feel like, is that they either go nuts in terms of producing offensively and their defensive game still needs to, develop. And we saw this with Zach Werenski, right? Like, his rookie season, he had incredible offensive potential, but I don't think he was any kind of great shakes defensively, right? Similarly, Lane Hudson just won the Norris. I believe broke a record for points by a Montreal Canadiens rookie defenseman. Kind of a disaster defensively, and again, that's something that'll get better when he's not literally a rookie. And I think it's going to be a similar thing with Mateychuk, he really focused on defense this season, and I think we're going to see him focus on offense next season, and maybe a little bit at the cost of defense. But I really do think we're going to see an improved Denton Mateychuk next season. And honestly, that by itself, I think, is an argument to say that the Blue Jackets are going to be better defensively this season. If you've got Werenski, who's probably going to be about the same, Fabbro, who's going to be the same, except we're going to get him for an extra 15 to 20 games. Provorov is what he is, and then you add an improving player to the player that you had last season. There's reason to believe that that they'll get better defensively as a group. And the other thing that I think will probably help is if they can improve the penalty kill. And also, I think the bottom pairing will probably be a little bit better this season than they were last season. Again, if only because hopefully it'll be a little bit more stable. And we won't have to rely on Jack Johnson playing like not a lot of minutes, but like frankly, too many minutes. I don't think that Gary Gabranson is any kind of great shakes defensively these days, but I'd probably take Gabranson over Jack Johnson. In fact, I would definitely take Gabranson over Jack Johnson, right? So I think the defense is going to be better. I think that, if Mateychuk improves and if Provorov keeps the contract year energy that he had this year, I think that second pairing is going to be much improved. And I expect that top pairing to be basically the same as it was, but instead of for 65 games or whatever it was, 68 games, we'll have them for all 82. He's hoping anyway, knock on wood, because of the injury curses. I'm going to take another quick break, and then I'm going to really quickly sketch out the penalty kill and why I think the penalty kill is going to be better next season and what that will do to kind of perceptions of the defense as a whole. So we'll do that in just a second here on Locked on Blue Jackets. First, I'm going to tell you about game time. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day, you suddenly realize that you want to be in the stands. It's exactly where game time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without the stress. I know this personally because I do it all the time. I will constantly be like, hey, let's go to a Sharks game when I'm in California, because tickets are $19 and game time will save you money on tickets and also on time as well. You can splurge on food, drinks, merch, invite another friend to come with you. Like game time, sometimes they won't give you an official 3-for-2 offer, but sometimes you're like, man, it is so cheap on game time that I can afford to buy another ticket for a friend and it will still be cheaper than other ticketing apps. They make buying tickets fast and simple. Prices drop the closer you get to the first pitch or the puck drop or whatever. They've got clear seat views and their lowest price guarantee takes the worry out of buying. Take the guesswork out of tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to Locked on Blue Jackets. We're talking about the defense, and I just real quick wanted to get into the penalty kill. Because I think, again, this is going to be, like, that's something that needs to improve, right? Like, they actually were better on the penalty kill than they were at 5-on-5 at defense last season, and they were only 6% worse than average instead of 8% worse than average at 5-on-5. And I think partially it's, if goaltending improves, then I think it'll make the defense look a lot better. But in terms of the penalty killers, something that is a problem right now, for me anyway, is who's playing on the penalty kill. Right now, as of, last season, Ivan Provorov was the most played penalty killer on the Blue Jackets. He played 2.5 minutes a game on average. And that to me feels like a problem. Similarly, Eric Gabranson was, obviously he only played, 15, 20 games this season. But when he was in the lineup, he played a ton of penalty kill time, which is also a problem. Played 2.5 minutes on average, just a shade under Provorov. Third place is Dan forward. Fourth place, Jack Johnson, who, again, was kind of in and out of the lineup. But again, when he was in the lineup, played a ton of penalty kill minutes, over 1.5 minutes per game, which, why is Jack Johnson killing penalties? Same amount for Fabbro and Werenski. Now, in fairness, Werenski is not the most defensively adept guy in the world. I'm not mad that he's not leading the team in penalty kill. I personally would be giving Fabbro more minutes on the penalty kill. In terms of other players, Damon Severson played 1.3 minutes on average. Denton Mateychuk apparently didn't play on the penalty kill, which I'm fine with. But that to me feels like you've got to figure out, okay, you can't keep the penalty kill going like this with the players that you have, Provorov needs to play less. Gabranson needs to play less. Jack Johnson won't be playing. Fabbro play more. Werenski probably can stay about where he is. I'd be interested to see Mateychuk on the penalty kill. I don't think it'll be out of this world, great. But I think that, you have to see if it's an option, right? We saw that with guys like Kent Johnson and Cole Sillinger became a pretty good penalty killer this season, so things like that. Also, in terms of penalty kill, obviously you're going to see more forwards or different forwards. No more just a Danforth, no more Sean Corrali, no more Luke Cunnin. Like, you're not going to see any of these guys, although Corrali is not on this list. So it wasn't one of the top 10 penalty killers on the team this season, which does surprise me a little bit, but he did kind of... Dean Everson didn't love Sean Corrali, and I think that it's kind of really obvious when you look at the penalty kill, because he was the penalty kill guy, right? But that being said, bring in Charlie Coyle, kills penalties. Isaac Lundestrom will probably kill penalties as well. I'd love to see Kent Johnson get more penalty kill time. I'd love to see Adam Fantilli get some more penalty kill time. I'd love to see Cole Sillinger continue to grow. Having Jenner for the full season will probably help. Having Monahan for the full season will probably help, And I really do think, and like the reason I'm talking about all of this is that I feel like the Blue Jackets' defensive woes are not just at even strength. They are also in the penalty kill. Like it's easy to say, oh well, they were bad at 5-on-5 defense, but they were worse at penalty kill. Like they were about the same, but improving the penalty kill and allowing fewer goals there, I think will absolutely help the kind of general perception of how many goals this team is allowing, right? And again, like just for ease, the stats that I rumbled off earlier, ice time, expected goals, etc. That was that was in all situations, not at even strength, right? So improve the penalty kill, your numbers get better. I think the eye test will get better as well. Now, again, it is important to note that improved goaltending will definitely help. But if they could, allow fewer shots on the penalty kill, that would be great. Because last season they allowed 7.5 expected goals per 60 minutes. So that's per 60 minutes off penalty kill, not like per game, but like that's too many. That is simply too many expected. Like in 358 minutes of penalty kill last season, they allowed 44.5 expected goals. It's too many. Like it is simply too many goals, right? So that to me is that's the big thing that's got to change for me. I think even strength was shaky, but I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt in terms of that will be better. It will be better this season. I think players have grown. I think players have gelled. I think the defense got better as the season went on. The penalty kill was dire the entire season. It just was, right? Like it was maybe average for a minute there in the middle, I feel like. I remember being like, hey, we're not in the bottom third of the league in the penalty kill. Go us. But the penalty kill needs to improve straight up. And I do think improving the penalty kill will improve the defense overall, both in terms of stats and also just in terms of how people look at it. And frankly, if they improve the penalty kill, they'll allow fewer goals and lose fewer games. So that's always a good thing in my book, right? That's all I've got for today. We're going to be back tomorrow. I'm going to touch on the new guys that they signed this week. Not a ton of time, but I'm going to look at that. And I also want to look at the power play as well. If we've just looked at the penalty kill, I want to look at the power play. Who should be on it? Who's going to be on it? Like, can they improve the power play? Because the power play, again, like Sean Monahan made that power play great, and then he disappeared and it fell off a cliff. So is that something that they should worry about this year? Maybe. We'll talk about all of that in tomorrow's episode. Thank you for listening to this episode, for making it your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets continues to be free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. I have been your host, Jay Foster. You can find me on Blue Sky at JAKOBFORSTER. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jackets on Twitter, LO-Blue Jackets on Blue Sky. Thank you once again for listening, and until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.